Well, in the last lecture, we investigated a recent development in physics that can be viewed as pointing in the direction of the views that we've been espousing in these lectures. The theory of emergence. The theory argues that, at least in certain cases, the reductionism that's been typical of the physical sciences is out of place, because there are phenomena that must be accounted for by explanations of a higher order rather than a lower one. Newtonian gravity, for example, cannot be explained by analysis into its constituent parts, but can be explained by Einstein's broader or higher theory. While the theory of emergence has been embraced with enthusiasm by some, many working scientists still consider it controversial. This evening, we turn to another controversial theory, vitalism. Since it's not widely familiar, excuse me, I'll begin by giving you some definitions of it provided by well-known sources. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, vitalism is the doctrine or theory that the origin and phenomena of life are due to or produced by a vital principle as distinct from a purely physical or chemical force. According to Webster's New World Dictionary, vitalism is the doctrine that the life in living organisms is caused and sustained by a vital force that is distinct from all physical and chemical forces, and that life is, in part, self-determining and self-evolving. That last phrase is an interesting and worthwhile addition to the Oxford definition. Self-determining and self-evolving. The Encyclopaedia Britannica describes it as a school of scientific thought. Now, this is also an interesting addition, and this is a true addition, and the result, or perhaps I should say rather the cause, of much of the dispute that surrounds the concept of vitalism. So it's a school of scientific thought, the germ of which dates from Aristotle, that attempts, in opposition to mechanism and organicism, to explain the nature of life as resulting from a vital force peculiar to living organisms and different from all other forces found outside living things. This force is held to control form and development and to direct the activities of the organism. And then the Britannica goes on to add, vitalism has lost prestige as the chemical and physical nature of more and more vital phenomena have been shown. If these descriptions are correct, you would be right to conclude that the views proposed in these lectures constitute a form of vitalism. But as the Britannica suggests, in scientific circles, vitalism is not only seen as mistaken, but as foolish, disreputable, and embarrassing. Something to be classified with belief in UFOs or the flat earth. According to the philosopher Daniel Dennett, vitalism has been, quote, relegated to the trash heap of history, unquote. In the words of Francis Crick, the famous co-discoverer of the structure of DNA, quote, and so, to those of you who may be vitalists, I would make this prophecy. What everyone believed yesterday and you believe today, only cranks will believe tomorrow. Unquote. What is the ground of this uncompromising rejection? And what is our response to it? For the answer to the first question, we must turn to history. The scientific discipline concerned with the nature of life is biology. But the science of biology was a late development. Modern science began, as we saw, around 1600 with physics and astronomy. William Gilbert on magnets, Kepler on the planets, Galileo on motion, Newton on gravity, and so on. Biology had different roots, namely in the practice of medicine, which of course was concerned with the practical task of healing. Biology did not emerge as a science in its own right until around the beginning of the 19th century, 2 centuries after Galileo. By that time, the new physics was well established. And you will recall that the worldview associated with that physics was entirely mechanistic. We saw that Descartes viewed animals merely as machines, and Julien de la Mettrie propagated the view that all living things, including man and the phenomenon of life itself, are machines. The early investigators of life wanted biology to be a genuine science, but they were not happy with the mechanism or the mechanicism, the philosophy of the mechanical philosophy that physics seemed to demand. The practice of medicine from its earliest days had relied on the special healing powers of the living human body, powers which were not in evidence in the world of physics and astronomy. It seemed to many early biologists that living beings, in general, differ in fundamental ways from those that are not living. And this view had been supported already during the previous 18th century by cultural trends outside of science. The cultural world reacted against the soulless mechanicism of Descartes. We can find many references in English poetry and literature, and even philosophical, political, and economic writing during that century, to the mysterious power of vital spirits or sparks, vital particles or functions, vital energies, forces and motions, vital air and vital breath. Well, the English scholar Catherine Packham has done some very interesting explorations of this material in this very recently published book, just came out a month or so ago, the 18th century Vitalism, mentioned in the footnote. The early biologists of the 19th century inherited a culture of vitalism, and they attempted to incorporate this vitalism into their science. Here, for example, are the opening paragraphs dealing with the definition of life, of a treatise by the great French biologist Xavier Bichat, who lived during his time. The definition of life, he says, is to be sought for in abstract considerations. That's because we don't, he's going to go on to say, we don't have a direct experience of it. It will be found, I believe, in this general perception. Life is the totality of those functions which resist death. Such, in fact, is the mode of existence of living bodies, that everything which surrounds them tends to their destruction. Inorganic bodies act upon them incessantly. They themselves exercise a continual action, the one upon the other, and would necessarily soon be destroyed did they not possess a permanent principle of reaction. This principle is life. Not understood in its nature, it can be known only by its phenomena, the most general of which is that constant alternation of action on the part of external bodies and of reaction on the part of the living body, the proportions of which alternation vary according to age. You see here that for Bishar, living bodies resist death, exercise a continual action. He has Plato's viewpoint that they initiate action and possess a permanent principle of reaction. Even though we don't understand the nature of life in itself and can know it only through its phenomena or manifestations. Now, the strict meaning of the word science that we have today in the English-speaking world, as meaning the experimental investigation of nature, exemplified especially by physics and chemistry, which put forward testable theories and endeavoured to prove them. This meaning of the word science, this strict or narrow meaning of the word, developed only around the middle of the 19th century. Before then, the word science had generally the broader meaning of an organised or systematic body of knowledge about almost any kind of subject. It was in this sense that Aristotle spoke of episteme, which is usually translated science. And this broader sense is still, to this day, the usual meaning of the word Wissenschaft in German. So the Preußische Akademie der Wissenschaften deals very often with literature, for example, the Academy of Sciences. These differences in terminology can still give rise, occasionally, to misunderstandings about what belongs to science and what does not. Now, this tightening of the meaning of the word science occurred in the English-speaking world at the same time as the concept of biology developed to mean the scientific, in this new, stricter sense, the scientific investigation of living beings. The result was a struggle between the two forces, the vitalist conception of science, or prevalent in the culture, which recognised that living beings were unique, and the strict conception of science, which insisted on theory, experiment, and proof. The vitalists initially regarded many aspects of living things as uniquely vitalistic, and therefore incapable of being produced by the inanimate world. The Swedish chemist Jöns Jacob Berzelius, who created much of our modern chemical terminology, proteins, a whole 20 or 30 common terms in modern chemistry were coined by him. Berzelius suggested the distinction we still make between inorganic and organic compounds, and maintained that organic compounds contained the life force, but inorganic ones did not. Is anybody familiar with this name of Berzelius? Well, it's famous to Yaleys. It's a student club at Yale. well, named after Berzelius, bizarrely Berzelius.
What year was he again?
1771 to 18.
Berzelius?
Early 19th century, around the year 1800, plus or minus.
Really?
The Vitalists believed that certain substances, such as urea, could only be produced by living bodies. They pointed out that ordinary inorganic matter could be heated and might melt, but could be brought back to its original state once the heat was removed. But organic compounds did not merely heat, but cooked, and then could not be brought back to their original components. As the 19th century wore on, the Vitalists were compelled, in the name of science, to demonstrate experimentally